Call the October 1st, 2019 Finance Committee meeting to order at 6:45 PM. Chair would entertain a motion for consideration of claims.
Your Honor, I would make a motion for consideration of claims to be paid in the amount of $443,130.27, payroll and liabilities for 9/13/2019 in the amount of $218,266.05, for a total of $661,396.32.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the claims?
Your Honor, I have just two questions, if I could. Mia, I noticed, do we give an allowance, like a uniform allowance to city employees or anything of that nature?
Your Honor, we do.
Okay. I noticed, do we buy them, do they get a card and they're able to buy their clothes, or do they tell you what they want? The reason I asked, I noticed the work boots and stuff on here, and I've seen them a couple times, so I wasn't sure if that's something that we're purchasing or they're purchasing with their allowance.
Your Honor, typically, police department, of course, is they receive a little bit higher of a uniform budget just based on what they're required to wear. We do have certain departments that do have uniform budgets based on where they're working, and we do allow for work boots. Generally, what happens is that we've got certain vendors within the city of Riverton that they buy their work boots through, and they can charge them, and then we receive the tickets and pay for the charge sales.
Okay.
So if there's reimbursements, it's typically, those are on a case-by-case basis, but depending upon what they're for, we will typically honor those as well.
Okay, thank you. So,
Anything else?
I don't have anything.
All right. All in favor say aye.
aye.
Vote aye. Motion passes. Any other business?
I have none, Your Honor.
I have none, Your Honor.
Okay. I guess the only thing I would note, I appreciated Corey bringing that up. This looks like this is our second payments for community service organizations this month. So a lot of money that Riverton is putting into a lot of organizations that are providing needed services in the city of Riverton, and I just appreciate all the efforts of those folks that have been providing recreation, help for homeless folks, that sort of thing. So I think it's great. All right. And I guess we'll adjourn at 6:48 p.m.
October 1st, 2019 regular session of the Riverton City Council to order at 7 o'clock. The Pledge of Allegiance will be given to us by Councilman Larson, and the invocation by Councilman Hancock.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet together tonight as a city council and to have the public here and the city staff. We ask that it please help us to be receptive to the needs of the city and to be receptive to our constituents, and that we can make decisions that will be in the best interest of the citizens of the city of Riverton. We thank Thee for Thy guidance in the past and ask that it continue to guide this city so that it can benefit all those who are in it. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Would the city clerk please conduct roll call?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilwoman Collar Borders.
Here.
Councilman Tim Hancock.
Here.
Councilman Mike Bailey.
Here.
Councilwoman Rebecca Schatze. Here. Councilman Kyle Larson.
Here.
Councilman Corey Rhoda.
Here.
Mayor Richard Gard.
Here. I declare a quorum present. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the addition of the mayor's proclamation on Domestic Violence Awareness Month before item 9.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Hancock and a second by Councilwoman Borders. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Motion passes. Communication from the floor. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the council regarding an item that is already on the agenda will be given the opportunity to speak later. I would ask those individuals who wish to address the council at this time to approach the podium and identify yourself for the record.
My name is Lisa Williams, and I'm a local business owner here. This is a little hard for me to talk about, and I want to apologize for my tardiness in bringing this to you. I think that I've given everyone present a copy of this flyer that we've made up. The woman on the bottom of this flyer, many of us know. Her name is Diane Hood. She's the operations manager at AMR, our ambulance service. She has been battling kidney cancer for almost 3 years. Sorry. She's very close to me. She's now been upgraded to stage 4 renal cell carcinoma, which puts her survival rate for 5 years at 0 to 20%. July 8th of this year, her 2-year-old sassy little granddaughter that's on the top of this flyer was also diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma, which is a rare form of childhood cancer. Us girls at Profiles Hair Design are doing a benefit this Saturday. Our council person, Corey Rhoda, is going to be our DJ for that event. There's going to be spaghetti, there's going to be a silent auction, there's going to be a bunch of different events during the benefit, and I personally would love to see all of you there and come out and support her and her granddaughter. Anybody that has any questions can call Profiles Hair Design and ask for myself or any of the girls there. Most of the time they'll refer the phone call to me, but I'd love to see all of you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
My name is Larry Wallace, and I have been a nurse for 37 years in 3 different states, Illinois, Missouri, and here in Wyoming. As you all are aware of, alcohol addiction and drug addiction are major problems all across this country. Whether it be in the city, in the country, in the suburbs, it happens everywhere. Most of us have at least a family member, close or distant, who have been affected and who have been addicted to alcohol. Even our former president, George W. Bush, at one point in his life, was addicted to alcohol. 3 of my mother's 6 brothers had alcohol addiction at one point in their life, and in the latter years of my mother's life, she also was addicted to alcohol for a period of time, and then she finally broke that addiction. I was Andy Antelope's nurse for 4 years here in the Wyoming area, and so I met him back in '03 and worked with him through '07. Got to know him pretty well. When I would initially see him for medical reasons, his situation looked grim. He was under the influence of alcohol. He was untidy and a little irritable. But when he became clean and sober through treatment, he cleared up and was very easy to work with. I was certainly very much disturbed when I heard about the shooting at Walmart because first we all didn't know who it was. But when I found out that it was Andy who had been killed, I was much shocked. I think I had seen him a week before there in that same lobby area, sitting down on an electric cart, and an ambulance crew was trying to get him into an ambulance. One thing I will say about Andy, at the age of 58, which is about 15 years after I knew him, he was no kung fu fighter. He was overweight. His gait was unsteady. He was confused a lot of the times. And I find it difficult to think that he would viciously attack anyone in a way that would really be threatening to them. As I said, I've worked with a lot of alcoholics, and sometimes that behavior that looks like aggression is simply a communication, body language communication of get away from me. One thing I will say in reference to what the mayor said in the paper this last Sunday, when Andy was clear and sober, he was also a nice guy. And I've concluded that the headshot which took his life was basically an act of execution when non-lethal means were available and could have been used.
Bobby, did you want to add anything?
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Good. Oh, cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Bobby Fallett. I'm the K2TV Fremont County Bureau reporter. That title will soon be changing, though, to Natrona County, as I'm being called up to be the reporter in Casper. But I really just wanted to say this, and this will probably most likely be my last city council meeting being here. So I just really want to say thank you to literally everyone in this room. I told myself I'm not going to get emotional. So and usually I have 1:30 to 2 minutes to tell the story, so I'm trying to keep it in that time as well. So really, honestly, thank you so much for, I mean, you took a California kid, moved 1,000 miles away from family, friends, and you made Riverton his home. So thank you.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I want to say thank you, Bobby. I want to, what you've done for the community as far as get us on the map is something positive. I can't say thank you enough. The amount of stories that people have came to me and told me about that they see about Riverton all over the state. People call me, say, hey, I heard something going on in Riverton on K2 News. So I want to say thank you for all that you've done for our community, and hopefully whoever's replacing you is just as good. And congratulations.
Thank you. And more, this is a see you later. It's not a goodbye. So I'll be back for the rendezvous games and everything like that, too. I'll make sure I'll drive. So thank you, everyone.
You're competing next year?
Possibly.
Thanks, Bobby. Would the city clerk please read the consent agenda items by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Approval of the minutes, September 17th, 2019, regular council meeting. Approval of the minutes, October 1st, 2019, Finance Committee meeting. Approval of the Finance Committee recommendations for October 1st, 2019. And an open container permit application for the Riverton Downtowners Association for an outdoor festival and brew fest and Hunter's Ball on October 12, 2019 on Broadway Avenue between Washington and Main Street from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Thank you. Are there any other items requiring further discussion?
Your Honor.
Yes.
The recommendations of the Finance Committee were for bills to be paid in the amount of $443,130.27, payroll liabilities for September 13th, 2019 in the amount of $218,266.05, for a total of $661,396.32. I think I said all that right.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Borders and a second by Councilwoman Schatze. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. The mayor's proclamation, Domestic Violence and Awareness and Prevention Month proclamation. Whereas domestic violence affects every person in Fremont County, either as a victim, a survivor of domestic violence, or as a family member, significant other, a friend, a neighbor, a coworker. And whereas our commitment to serve domestic violence survivors by acknowledging, invigorating, and rededicating ourselves to the goal of eliminating domestic violence. And whereas advocates are working to provide support to domestic violence survivors, to encourage relatives and friends of people experiencing domestic violence to seek help, and to guide those in need to the appropriate support groups, support services. And whereas domestic violence programs and other professionals and advocates of nonviolence have joined together in supporting each other in their work to provide the Riverton community with a central source of information on domestic violence. And whereas the City of Riverton promotes the public understanding of family violence and the increased sensitivity to victims and family violence, emphasizing the need for citizens' involvement in the efforts to reduce family violence through public education and changing public attitudes. And whereas I, Richard Piegard, do hereby designate October 2019 as Domestic Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. In witnessing hereof, I do hereunto set my hands this first day of October in the year 2019. Thank you. Item number 19 is a public hearing and consideration for a new bar and grill liquor license application for Brown Sugar, Inc., doing business as Brown Sugar Coffee Roastery. The city clerk's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mayor and council, before you tonight for your consideration is a new bar and grill liquor license application submitted by Brown Sugar Incorporation, doing business as Brown Sugar Coffee Roastery, and this is located at 203 East Main Street. The application is for the remainder of the 2019-2020 licensing year. The Wyoming Liquor Division has certified the application as complete. The proper fees have been paid and proper notice to the public has been advertised. Therefore, based on this information, staff recommends approval of the license as presented.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Councilwoman Schatz has presented a motion, second by Councilman Rhoda. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The motion passes. I now declare a public hearing is open. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes and with other applicable laws. I would ask those individuals wishing to address the council to approach the podium to identify yourself for the record. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? Seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Rhoda and a second by Councilwoman Schatz. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the bar and grill liquor license application for Brown Sugar, Inc.
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Schatz has the motion, and the second is by Councilwoman Borders. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Ordinance number 19-011, second reading, allowing shipping containers in residential zoning. Community Development Director's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before you this evening for your consideration on second reading is Ordinance 19-010, amending Chapter 17.20 of the Riverton Municipal Code, allowing the use of shipping containers as accessory structures within residential zoning districts. Following discussion from the September 17, 2019 council meeting, the requirements for side and rear yard setbacks have been stricken for this reading. I should note here, Section 17.16.070 of the Riverton Municipal Code provides for 5-foot side and rear yard setbacks for all structures. In order to maintain consistency with the Riverton Municipal Code, staff would recommend amending Ordinance 19-010 to include minimum side and rear yard setbacks of 5 feet, or referencing compliance with 17.16.070, and subsequent approval on second reading. And with that, I'd stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 19-010 on second reading.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Bailey and a second by Councilwoman Schatze. Further discussion? Tim?
Your Honor, I think there are some folks here. I know we had the public hearing last time, but I had some people reach out that wanted to speak. So if you'd be willing to allow, I guess, anybody that wanted to speak to the issue, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Anyone in the audience that would like to address the ordinance, if you'd please step up and address this from the podium. If we could get your name for the record, we'd appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the city commission. I am Joe Pepper. I live down on Park Street, and I operate the AAA self-storage facility down there. I have no real opposition to being able to have these types of storage units within the city available to people to use for storage at their homes. I'm probably the only storage facility locally that has units large enough to even compete with the size of most of these units. But I'm most deeply concerned about this offset allowance when I believe you spoke to 5 feet, was you said?
Your Honor, that's correct.
Yes, thank you. 5 feet from back and side yards.
As I understand offset by most building codes, it's in line with in other words, you can't build a garage out further than the house line along the side of that street. So in this case, if you're going to allow 5 feet, you're going to have these things sticking out beyond the what I would understand, I believe, as the guidelines for offset on a given street. And I don't believe that would enhance the city appearance or most neighborhoods' appearance in any way whatsoever. But my real concern is getting enough support for the code enforcement people within our city who do a great job to have the opportunity and the support that they need to see that this kind of thing is enforced. I'd have no real objection whatsoever to people being able to purchase these and put them in their yards and store in them, as long as, at the same time, I'm assured by the members of the council that the code enforcement people will get the assistance that they need to enforce the codes. We certainly don't get the assistance that they need to enforce parking RVs or trailers all along on the streets. I don't see that happening. So I'm concerned about whether it happens with this. And that's my only real concern as far as this item is concerned. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Joe?
Joe?
Sure. Kyle, you have the floor.
How do you get these shipping containers in the backyard?
I have no earthly idea how that would be done. And I'm certainly not going to dig into it because I'm probably the only one with large enough storage units that would be in any direct competition with these to begin with. But bring it on. I'm willing to compete. That's why I got in business to begin with.
So you have no idea. If the only place they could put it is in the backyard, you don't know how to get it there.
If the only place they can put an RV is out in the street, in a sense, it's a similar proposition to me.
We're not going to allow shipping containers in the middle of the street.
I hope not. I hope we're not going to allow them within 5 feet of the sidewalk either.
Motorhomes have wheels. Shipping containers are flat on the.
And our code requires that they not be parked out on the street, but it's not enforced. And I believe the reason it's not enforced is the people who have to face the public objections to somebody are not getting the support that they need in order to be able to stand up to keep the place looking halfway decent. You take a look at 16th Street, my God.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Now, the motion that we have in front of us, so everybody's clear, ma'am, would you like to speak? Please address us. And I'll try not to talk over the top of you. How's that?
My name is Jennifer Long, and I'm managing GLM Storage. We store motorhomes, boats, everything. I was concerned about this too, because isn't there an ordinance against having motorhomes and trailers and boats and et cetera on the streets more than a few days?
Yeah, and it's actually a length discussion, and that's an amendment, that's an ordinance that we could go to work on, but it's not the one we're looking at today.
Okay.
We would, if you would like to get with me or Tony or any council member, we can fill you in on that ordinance that
Okay.
Mr. Pepper and you are both concerned with.
Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting. I can tell you how they can get that, they'll get them there. I drove semis, trucks. Those containers sit on a chassis, and they have to have a forklift to get them off. So I don't know how they're going to do it here.
I can help with that also. These units are designed to be lifted, and they'll pick all four corners, and they'll swing them right into your backyard from almost anywhere. You have to hire a crane, but that's the cost of doing business. So we do have a setback on the front yard. Last week, we had setbacks proposed to us on the side and backyards of 10 feet. Those were removed. We would, what the city staff is suggesting is that we put back in, if we can get a motion for that, for those to be set off the back and side yards 5 feet. So we don't have any of these units in the front yard or the driveways. And there's lots of residential areas that aren't big enough to have these. That's the reality of it. So, and Mr. Pepper's correct. He's got big storage units. We want his business to thrive in Riverton. So, you know, this is just those are all good points. But yes, these are made to pick up and lift, and they can be lifted into your backyard without placing a tire on your grass.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Lance?
Thank you, Your Honor. Lance Godey. I'm a resident of Riverton. I had the opportunity to make a few comments at the first reading, so I wanted to just add a few to those comments. At that reading, it was stated that homeowners should generally be allowed to put on their property what they want, that it's their decision to make. But this really ignores that the city has already made multiple decisions about what can or cannot be put on a person's property because it may affect another's, especially in a residential area. We regulate the location of businesses. We regulate things like water and sewer. We regulate the presence of weeds or trees hanging over a city street, just to name a few. Can we all agree that a questionable business, a water well or a sewer leach field, or unkempt lawn or trees will negatively affect the next door home's value? But you want to say that the city shouldn't regulate the type of storage space other than its location. So you do actually have concerns about the appearances of a shipping container, noting that with a lot of enough size, it will be likely that they will only be located behind the house, thus blocked from view. But why are you even suggesting that? Well, it has to be because of appearance, and that those are important to you, thus the reason why you're saying 50 feet. Otherwise, you could put it in the front, and that would be okay because people can do that on their property. We have a minimum standard. You have decided to tell a homeowner what to do on their property, even with the shipping containers. So I'm opposed to this ordinance, not because it would affect me personally on my property. My property is not large enough that it would be affected, or that I would be able to utilize a storage shipping container. And most of the lots around me in my neighborhood would not qualify. But it does affect me in a larger sense because I am a member of this community, and I care about the appearances of my community. I think we could all agree appearances matter. I believe this ordinance will negatively affect property values, although I leave that to the professionals to tell you by how much. I am not a professional in that area. Many of the people in this room and all of the council members at some level, to one extent or another, have contributed positively to the appearances of Riverton. Whether it's picking up trash, spraying weeds, keeping a nice-looking home, or endorsing ordinances as such. I would ask you not to support this ordinance that will mar those appearances and the hard work that we have taken to improve Riverton to this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Lance.
My name is Bruce Caminga, and I guess I'm here to support the ordinance because I have seen the positive and the negative effects of having adequate storage on a yard, whether it be a shipping container or a wooden shed or the little tin sheds that you buy from, a discount store. They all have hazards, but they all do contribute in some way to the value of the property. I came from Michigan. We saw it there. When people would have adequate storage, their junk didn't sit outside. Therefore, I believe that it'll actually enhance property values, and having the freedom to put one on a piece of property, even though I don't have one now, would be a positive effect on some of the properties that I have. So, thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kurt Galitz, and I had spoke briefly at the first reading of this ordinance, and we had some time to chat with the community, social media, chat with some clients on some thoughts, and it was definitely a mixed bag, as it seems like it is here this evening. And the more I sit here and listen to our fellow citizens, I think the major concern obviously is appearance, and obviously heard some concerns about some safety with 16th Street campers, that kind of thing. And the only concern that I have, the more that I speak with my wife, who's also my business partner on this as well, is if this is something that passes and you keep these in the backyard, I agree that it needs to be regulated. It needs to make sure that it's permitted, that you don't end up having some stuff slip through the cracks and then you have shipping containers on streets and driveways blocking views. I pulled out in front of a highway patrolman the other day because I couldn't see around a camper that was parked on the side of the street. And I'm concerned that a shipping container could end up there because, it's going to be temporary. I'm getting my crane, it's coming, and then it ends up sitting there for a significant amount of time, causing, I would say, possible safety hazards for wrecks, that kind of thing. So I do urge you guys to, if this is going to go forward, please make sure it's monitored, make sure it's permitted, and make sure they stay where they're supposed to stay to keep the appearance of Riverton up. Thank you.
Mayor, Kurt, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Does it devalue the property?
So when it comes to devaluation, obviously, I don't want to say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but it is basically your perception. It's going to be, I've tried to go out and do as much research as possible on this to come with some kind of value. And there's all sorts of stuff about people living in shipping containers, and that's not helpful. So I would say it is going to depend on that buyer. If you have a buyer that comes up to the property and says, I think that this shipping container looks hideous, I am absolutely not going to buy this house because I cannot stand to live next to this, then absolutely you have deterred that buyer from potentially buying that property. As Mr. Kaminga said, if they have a shipping container and said, I don't have to look at all this person's junk that's sitting in the yard, this guy has his yard looking neat, absolutely, I'm going to buy this property. So it's going to be a buyer per buyer situation. The general consensus from what I had on social media was most of my friends and colleagues were opposed to this because they felt for the most part it would be deterrent to property values, but ultimately that's for the buyer to decide.
So if it's merely aesthetic, what if, and this may be out of something we could do, what if we encouraged they have to paint it?
I have no idea about painting. I've seen plenty of sheds that are dilapidated that are in some serious need of some paint and should be torn down. I think it's something that has been stated. If these are going to be out there, it's going to be something that should definitely be monitored and made sure that they're kept up to the appearances that they're supposed to. Obviously, having them maintained nicely is going to be good for everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good evening. George Piplica, Home Source Realty. If I may, on the valuation, we don't value, a structure for $1,000 or $1,500 or $500. It's not the value. It is the appearance of the property that makes a difference, and having yards with multiple containers in it may be a distraction or may cause those buyers not to buy. But we can't actually stand up here and say that will devaluate that property. We're fortunate today in really the place that's selling the containers is bringing a quality looking, well-painted, visually affected. That I understand that. I think that looks good. I don't want to say I'm against the storage containers, but I have a great deal of fear about the size of the containers, what we're going to allow in the backyard. This is not like a 6x8 storage shed or a great big storage shed in Riverton. You drive around, you might find one 10x12 or 12x14, but you can find these things 12x60. And we've got to look at a limitation of size if we're going to allow that. I understand the setback from the back of the house makes a difference. I do agree with the gentleman that it's better to have something in storage than have 60 bicycles stacked up in the backyard, all right? There's some truth to that. And then you've got to seriously consider the stacking ability. You don't stack a skid structure, but you will find these as tree houses. You will find them if you don't put some regulation on what they can do with them. They're a fabulous place to build a castle in the backyard. You've got to look at a regulation where if you're going to pass this, then let the regulation be firm with the regulation and let it go on as the community takes care of itself, which is our duty. As a realtor, our duty is to protect property value rights. We protect those rights by trying to help with, you see me here a lot, with zoning, with concerns with public appearances, to the mayor with spraying weeds, Rebecca with kicking trash, we believe in that. We support that. We write checks for that. We're not against a storage shed. We're not against a container. We are against a container that's so large that it is a detriment to the neighbor. If we could start this ordinance, I did not research sizes, but if you could start it with 8x10s or 10x12s or some sort of regulation, and maybe because the school district is a concern, and I understand the school districts, we're fortunate to get to work with school districts. They need to be regulated in areas all through the community to service the community, so they're regularly in a residential neighborhood. But that school district could be an offset to the regulations where it says if it's a business use in a residential neighborhood, it could have a different set of rules of size. It could say those containers could be bigger by just stipulating the residential and the business use in the residential neighborhood. That's no different than sending a set of covenances to a neighborhood in a district, having that regulation manage that property. But just saying put them in 5-foot setbacks. And the other thing I think you're not thinking about, the minute you open that door, I think you'll find them up and down our federal empty lots for sale, not to the level that Mr. Skaggs takes care of them today. You're going to find those unpainted, graffitied, for sale for $1,000 because they can sell them. And they're going to litter our public main streets and federal with opportunities to sell them as soon as that green light's hidden. So we've got to put a regulation somewhere which helps do that. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, George.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm Jeremy Cruz. I'm against shipping containers in our residential neighborhoods. After Fire Chief Henry DeClercq spoke last time this was around, I'm surprised we're here again. Just to remind everyone who wasn't here, he said, I can't recommend moving forward with allowing this to happen. The chief compared a shipping container with a half a gallon of gas in it to a bomb, and he indicated that the amount of retrofitting that a shipping container would need to be safe would be prohibitively expensive and very difficult to regulate. So if the safety of our citizens isn't enough, maybe the value of our community will be. A neighborhood that people want to live in can be difficult to define. There's no single item that makes us feel good. It's a sum of many, many small parts. Tidy yards, well-maintained homes, inviting gardens. And these small details combine to help define the character of a place. We are discussing the feeling, the spirit, and the complexion of Riverton and property values. So the group of citizens working overtime to bring a hospital to our community, and should they succeed, and I hope they do, they're going to begin the difficult work of recruiting doctors, nurses, and staff to the hospital and to our town. This will bring jobs, families will come, they will buy homes, they'll shop in stores, they'll send children to our schools, and I think it's vital that we show them that we value our safety of our citizens and the beauty of our neighborhoods. I can't understand how a council that just passed a master plan with pages with recommendations about signage, building roof lines, inviting public art, and highlighting our small town values can be considering this. I can't understand how we can applaud the kicking trash crew for cleaning up Riverton while considering this. I can't understand looking at the golf course neighborhoods with the highest consistent property values and not wanting to mimic some of their good attitude. I can't understand looking at our regional neighbors and deciding that Casper is going to be our beacon. Surely we can have loftier goals. We've heard from the community development director. He recommended against shipping containers. We've heard from the realtors, against. We've heard from the fire chief, against. We've heard from a former mayor and former city council members, against. We've heard from citizens, largely against. We have all chosen to live in the city limits. We've collectively agreed to abide by the laws and regulations that come with living in town, and not only tolerate them, but in a county with 800,000 privately held acres, we have sought these regulations out, and we've hired you, the council and the mayor, to build upon and improve those rules. Anyone who wants land to do as they please has plenty of space outside of city limits. Please, listen to the experts, the citizens, the city staff. I urge you, take the small, painless step of letting the schools keep their containers with safety rules about their contents in place and keeping these ugly tools of industry out of our residential neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron Warpness, Mayor Guard, good evening.
Mayor, how are you?
Good. Council, staff, glad to be with you this evening again. At the last council meeting, Councilman Hancock was 100% correct when he said that this issue has been put to rest by the citizens of Riverton the last time that it was brought before the council. At that time, several citizens came out strongly opposed to shipping containers in residential areas. Councilman Bailey was not at that meeting. Perhaps he should go back and review that meeting. Mayor Guard suggested at the last meeting that a property owner should be able to use their land as they want. I agree with that sentiment for the most part, and it's a very reasonable sounding idea. However, if you want to see individual use of land in action, go across the river and see the results. Another specious argument by Mayor Guard was that a neighborhood can put together local covenants if they feel strongly against shipping containers. This is the very reason for zoning in a community, and the legal and real ability of a neighborhood to do such a thing for all practical purposes is very difficult, if not impossible, according to Councilman Hancock, who also is an attorney. Perhaps City Attorney Sollers can speak to that issue as well and tell us how easy this is to create and enforce. If I thought for a second that shipping containers in residential areas would help improve a neighborhood, I would be supportive of this issue. Sadly, however, this will not. They will only be a diminishment of property values and will be a real blight on the aesthetic value of a residential area. The problems that our neighborhoods have are not due to lack of storage areas, but one of personal respect and responsibility of property owners as well as lack of enforcement of current laws by the city. I encourage you to please do not go down this road. We have enough problems in Riverton without doing something that I feel is so short-sighted. And I don't know what else to say. I think it's all been said here this evening. We have a lot of problems in our community with weeds. I compliment you, Councilman Schatz, on the kicking weeds. That was a wonderful idea, and Mayor Guard out killing weeds with a backpack. I never did that, I'll have to admit. And so I give you all the accolades in the world for trying to make our community better. And if you drive down the alley that I live in, God, it needs help. And my wife reminds me every day. And I was out and mowed the weeds in our alley with, I've got one of these little two-wheel weed cutters, and I did my weeds and did two of my neighbors and whatnot. And we all need to work together, and shipping containers are a wonderful thing. I mean, they're an amazing piece of equipment in the right place, but they're shipping containers. They're not residential storage containers. And that sounds like a great business opportunity if you want to come up with something and make something. But I just really feel strongly that we're going the wrong direction by even considering this. It was a great surprise to me when it was brought up. So I apologize for helping to beat a dead horse. I've been in your position before, and I know it's uncomfortable, and that's not the intent, but I think the citizens have to speak with as strong and loud voice as they can to try to make that point. Otherwise, things go through, and then you shake your head later and say, how in the world did that happen? Well, now's an opportunity to see which direction that we want for our community. So thank you for this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else? Councilman Bailey?
Your Honor, and I didn't get the old copy of what we talked about before, but I thought we already had restricted these to 160 square feet. Am I not correct?
No, you're not correct.
Okay.
But we can.
So I would move to amend this ordinance to include that there's a 160 square foot maximum size, which is an 8 by 20. 8 by 20. If I do the math correct. And that they only be able to put on the ground, not stacked.
Yeah. One story?
One story, I guess, however you want to state that.
I would second his motion, his amendment.
Let's give Jim a chance, a good shot at us. I hate to keep a guy from taking a shot when he gets one.
I'll take a brief shot, Mayor. I'd like to clearly say I'm opposed to this ordinance. I live in a very modest residential neighborhood. I'm in no hurry to move my residents to some of our industrial area around town. I don't care for that sort of appearance and environment. I really don't want the accoutrements of a industrial site being brought to my home and my residence. So please don't allow that to happen. And if you're looking for a way to, as Mr. Rhoda was saying, to regulate this, perhaps you can treat it the same way as you would setting up a daycare center or something where all of the people within an X radius has to concur with you doing what you intend. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Anyone else? Now, Councilman Bailey, since we're in discussion mode amongst ourselves, You want to restate your motion?
I would move to amend the ordinance to include a limitation of 160 square feet on the storage containers, and that they only be able to stack 1 story high, on the ground.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilman Bailey to restrict to the 20-foot units. And just for everyone's understanding, from my research, there's only 20-foot units and 40-foot units. We have both in town. And so I don't know of a bigger unit than that. I could be wrong, but I believe the 40-foot unit is the largest that it comes in. So with this amendment, could we add, would you be acceptable to amend those setbacks that the city's recommending into your motion of 5?
Well, I guess to me that we've already got in there that the placement of a shipping container will be within an easement or right-of-way is prohibited. So I think that pretty much covers that.
Clarification, please.
Your Honor, an easement is a designated set of space where the setbacks would be from the sideline, from the side property line, as we do with the other accessory structures. So you put a shed, you have to move it off the property line, keep it 5 feet off the property line. Easements and right-of-ways are different.
So, but in a residential area, you can't build right on the property line, can you?
The answer to that,
Your Honor.
You want to take that? Yeah.
No. So we, Chapter 17.16.070 provides for setbacks from the front yard, from the side yard, and from the rear yard. Most easements along rear side or rear yard lines are 5 feet on either side of the property line, so a total of 10 feet. But there are many places in town that don't have rear yard easements, which is the reason for, I believe, or the intent of 1716.070. And so to provide consistency throughout the Riverton Municipal Code, that was the reason for the recommendation of adding the 5 yard or the 5 foot.
So if we change C to say placement of shipping container within an easement or comma setback or right-of-way is prohibited, would take care of that, wouldn't it not?
Your Honor?
Yes.
We could also just state that they have to comply with section 17.16.070 as well.
Okay.
That would achieve the same goal.
Mr. Pepper, do you have a question?
I have continuously run into the building department over the fire code on many of the things I wanted to do. I believe the fire code exceeds what these offsets are.
Mr. Pepper, there is allowances in the building code to build onto your property lines, but it takes a different structure, and I think you're aware of that.
That's correct.
And that's what you're trying to point out. Yeah. So if you really did want to build on your property line, Eric, jump in when I get too far into space. You would have to get a variance from your lot lines to build on the property line. The property line would then have to be a fire-protected wall of a certain hour or more.
Your Honor, that's correct.
And
Chapter 17.16.070 setback requirements also only deals with residential. In commercial or industrial zoning districts, you can build very close to the property line, if not on the property line.
so thank you, Mr. Pepper. Is that clarified for everyone? That we understand that? We're not trying to replace the fire codes. What the administration would like is a setback of 5 feet from the side yards and the backyards. Now, those get pushed around a lot, and it's hard to maintain that, but that's what ideally would be nice to maintain. We originally, in the first motion, had the setbacks at 10 feet. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
Side yard and backyard. Or do you want to restate what you want for setbacks? You comfortable where you're at?
I'd say let's vote on the one we have in front of us,
Okay.
and we can go farther if we need to.
On the amendment, do we need to restate that, or is it clear? Does everybody know where we're at? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed to the amendment?
Nay.
Nay.
Kyle?
Nay.
3? 3, thank you. So it's 4-3. So the amendment by Councilman Bailey is now passed, and that would be restricting to an 8 by 20 unit and 1 story tall on the ground with the current easements restricted. I don't know, Eric, for my clarification, does that give you what you want for setbacks?
Your Honor?
Yes.
With all due respect, could I get a little more clarification on the verbiage that's desired for setbacks? If we want to just reference compliance with 17.16.070, or if we want to actually restate the 5-foot setback?
So now we need an amendment to proceed with that setback, which I think is somewhat important. I would like to see that setback in place. Is the code controversial? Is that an argument point, or would 5 foot would 5 foot be easier to administer?
Your Honor, either way you guys want to take it.
So
my apologies, but yeah, it's really up to you.
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilman.
for, I guess, clarification's sake, I would amend the motion to add the 5 feet instead of doing the entire 17.16.080 because that one shows not less than 20 feet from in front. So I would just say add the 5 feet in rear.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
So all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, so we're once again 4-3. All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so now we have the setbacks in at 5 foot on side yards and backyards. A couple other things that I would like to discuss, just a little. This does not take care of our school district problem. They have 40-footers. And I would support the fact that they maintain their 40-footers. I think that's important to what we're discussing. And 40-footers have their place. And so I find it interesting, the questions and the statements from the community is these are unsafe, but it's okay if we put them on the playground. Interesting thought. So I would contend, I called all over the nation, trying my best to find a unit that had exploded, and I could not. And so I think that's an interesting thought. I don't think these endanger anyone as to explosion. If you want them to be explosion, we've already put in the original that you can't have flammable liquids. Is that not correct, Eric?
Your Honor, that's correct.
Okay. Tony, are we on that? So we are trying to address the fact that we don't want people to store gas in these units. So that's in there, and the children, I would like the school districts not to have to remove their units. And so I would ask for a motion of some nature to allow those schools to hold those units. And I would also like to point out they're in my residential zoning neighborhood. And I feel safe with them. They're very well put together. They're adequately looking. Most of our complaints tonight, I got a count that it's 3 to 4 against from the audience. We can't generate a discussion on ugly. Ugly is in everybody's eyes. My ugly is different than your ugly. And so the reason that we're back visiting this is that we have those units that need to be taken care of. So if I have to make the motion, I'll make the motion. I learned in Robert's Rules of Orders that mayors can make motions.
You're up.
George.
Thank you again, Councilor. I agree that in the school districts, but under your residential zoning, you have a clause that grants the school district's use, correct? I mean, it'll say a school district by, can be in residential B. It specifically states that in your zoning. If you would address that in your item per that zoning, under school district, they can have a 40-foot container, you've solved that issue. Because that's the whole point of breaking those uses down in your zoning. So the parameters are there if you just read that guideline. Does that make sense?
Yep, and that's what we need that motion to.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Borders.
Your Honor, I was just going to make an amendment to add the 40-foot in length for schools only, whatever language that needs to be. But I would be willing to motion for that.
Can you pick up a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Borders and a second from Councilwoman Schatze. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we got 5 this time? Ayes?
I vote aye, Your Honor. Aye.
Okay. Give me the nays. Kyle, are you still a nay?
No, I'm a yay.
Okay.
I just would like a comment that
Give me just a second, Kyle. Give me the what, how many were for? Everybody? Thank you. Go ahead, Kyle.
we suggested on the 17th that we address the school district specifically. You turned it down. You didn't want it that way. We asked that school district be allowed to have their storage sheds, whatever. And for some reason, we want to shove this down the throats of the citizens of Riverton. All we want to do is fix the school district. That was the original intent last time that it failed. We wanted to accommodate the school district. And as George has pointed out, it's a simple fix. And we don't need to go through ugly, bad, whatever. The school district will abide by maintaining its equipment. It has plenty of money to do that. It's not going to be storing gasoline in it. Who's going to, when we pass this, who is going to be policing placement of what containers in what areas and what is going to be in the containers? We've already talked about code violations up the gazooties, and we don't have the manpower to do that. So it's the same thing on, noise violations. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. So I got the third amendment has a 7-0. So now we have amendments, 3 amendments. One that the standard unit can only be an 8x20, 1-story tall. Second is that we have 5-foot setbacks on the sides and back, side yards and backs. And the third one is no 40-foot units in residential, just for school districts. Are those doable?
Your Honor, what we'll do is with the last one, the next reading you have on it, it'll have specific verbiage that addresses what we believe you think,
Okay.
what you're trying to do.
So we have all 3 amendments that you'll be able to work with?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you. Now back to the vote. All those in favor?
Your Honor.
Your Honor.
I'd like to say something about this, I guess. Are we Because we're done with the amendments. We're voting now on the ordinance. Is that
Correct. You are correct. And you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just know we had a lot of discussion on it from the public, which I really appreciated, but I had a few things I wanted to say. I think I agree a lot with Mr. Bailey that we have to do what we can to try to make sure that people have freedom to do things they want to do with their property. I think freedom is an important part of what we need to be thinking about and protecting, but there's always a balance, like we've been hearing. You've got the idea that when somebody comes and lives in the city, there's expectations of what is going to be allowed around them. We don't allow people to have pig farms in the city. Thank goodness. I don't want to live next to a pig farm. They stink. I don't want pigs getting out in my yard. They tear stuff up. Mr. Over could tell you about pigs getting into his yard. We've had discussions about pigs.
Yes, we have.
Surprisingly enough now, but he lives out of town. So there's limitations that we have done for years as part of living in a city, and they have to be things that are reasonable, things that are measured. As it stands, we have a lot of limitations, even the setbacks. We can't even try to sit there and say we're going to get rid of the setbacks here because it'd be in conflict with the rest of our code if we said no setbacks at all. So we have a lot of limitations, and I think this is a reasonable limitation to not allow shipping containers in city limits at all. It is, and I think part of it has to do with people maintaining them. I think the school district is going to take great care of their shipping containers. They're going to do things that are going to be safe and maintain them in such a way that they're going to be safe around children because they have children all around there, and they know they're going to be around there. Now, my neighbor, actually, I can't say anything bad about any of my neighbors because like half of them are in here.
Use my neighbors.
Yeah. I was going to say, okay, George, like down the street from me. We've got Eric, who's my next door neighbor, Tony, who's my neighbor in the back. Kyle used to be my neighbor. So there's a lot of my neighbors here. But if my neighbor wanted to get a shipping container, they're not going to be thinking about my kids. And my kids wander the neighborhood. I mean, it's kind of like the old bike gangs that, you know, I'm sure all of us were in a part of when we were younger. And I don't mean like the motorcycles. I mean the real bikes. So that happens, and you don't know where kids are going to get into. And so I think that in terms of safety and that kind of thing, okay, maybe we haven't had them blow up, but that doesn't mean that we haven't heard that specifically with engineering and everything that they don't have the ventilation that can prevent that from happening. So I think the reality is that's what we have to do. We're always thinking about that balance, and we have to. And I appreciate that we sometimes want to balance towards freedom, but I think there's also this idea that we do have to consider the interest of property owners and a reasonable expectation of what is going to be around you. I think it is very reasonable in our city limits, in our residential areas, to say you don't have shipping containers. They don't look as nice as other things that you could have there. I don't think it's reasonable to say, let's just give up and not regulate at all. I had the opportunity to go to Denver just recently to visit my sister, and I can tell you the residential areas over there, very nice, did not have shipping containers. You get more into the middle of the city, and there was this modern art, I suppose, that was 3 shipping containers, kind of one like this, and one sticking up, and I don't know, I guess they're art now. But I don't think there's something we need to have in town. I think if we want to do things to make Riverton look nice, and I think that's something that is my goal, that's something that I want. I think that Riverton being a nice town that people want to come is an important thing to do. Shipping containers is not the way to do it. If we want it to be a place where people have an easy time buying and selling property, I don't think shipping containers are going to help. We had one of the other realtors in town that wrote on this. I really enjoyed it, and I hope the rest of the council had an opportunity to see it. But just talking about the aesthetics of it, they aren't the only options for storing things. Talked about the balance I've been talking about, that we should be able to do what we want with our property, but we live in a community in which other people's interests are at stake. it's really weird to be in a town where your property rights, your property, the value of your property can be impacted so much by your neighbors. It makes me nervous every day that my neighbors might do something that can impact my ability to sell a house. And so you've got to balance that. She also complained about how really it's just such a bare bones ordinance, and talking about things like stacking them on top of each other, which I think Mike took care of with his. But anyway, I do think that it's just not the place for it. I think if we want to really focus on how to make Riverton look nice, I loved, who was it that said, let's not look at Casper as our beacon? Okay, that was Jeremy. I think, what's that?
Apologies to Casper.
Yeah, and that's nothing against Casper, but I do think if we want Riverton to be a nice place, we need to be doing things to keep it nice. So first off, I guess I would say I'm against the ordinance. I think that's been clear from the beginning. And I've had people reach out to me and say, how do you feel about the ordinance? And I've said, I thought it was pretty clear from when this has been reported I'm against it. If anybody questions that, I'm telling you right now, I'm against the ordinance. But I'm not the only one that has to make decisions here, and that's the way it should be. An idea that I have is that we do kind of what Jim was saying. As it stands, when we have, and this I think would keep the balance. When we have somebody who comes in and wants to have an home occupation permit, they have to go through, they have to contact all of their neighbors within 140 feet of the property where they're wanting to get the home occupation permit. They have to contact them by mail, and then they have to give them an opportunity to appear at a hearing that would be before the zoning board, the Board of Adjustment. And we could do that with this. That way, we're giving people the ability to do it, but if you have neighbors who are against it, who are dead set against it, they have a way that they can go in and express how they feel about it. That would be my thought, is that we just add that. We just take the language basically out of the home occupation. We'd have to adjust it a little bit. The home occupation permit, for example, addresses a couple of different things that wouldn't really fit. I kind of wrote it out a little bit, just taking out some of the references that it had. But first off, I would say I'm against it, but if the vote came back and everybody else wanted them, I'd be willing maybe on the third reading to discuss this and maybe meet somewhere in the middle and make it so that neighbors have an opportunity to chime in and say something about it. So,
Thank you.
and I think Mr. Rhoda wanted to say something, Your Honor.
Nope, I'm just
Oh,
taking it all in.
put on your hand.
Don't scratch if you don't want in.
Your Honor,
Bruce, do I have a, oh, excuse me?
we can let Mr. Kaminga speak, but prior to calling for the vote, can I read the ordinance by title? You forgot me again.
You sure can. We'll do it for you.
Yeah, Bruce Camming again, and Mr. Hancock, I respectfully disagree with you. Okay? I moved here from Michigan 10 years ago. The community I lived in allowed shipping containers, little tin storage sheds. We had to follow the basic setback rules like you're talking tonight. And I never saw any impact on my property values. And I had 3 or 4 properties in the community I was in. At that point, we had seen issues with the, when I say tin sheds, I literally mean those, you know, where they stake them to the ground with nails. There, in my community there alone, there was 3 of those. Had gasoline explosions in them because somebody had run electricity out there and they flipped the light on and there was fumes. Never once did I see a shipping container blow up. I mean, there was one that had a fire in it, and they closed the door, and they extinguished it through the vents. I also seen a hand-built, or stick-built, I guess they call it, wooden shed, blow the roof over 70 feet into the air and have it land on a travel trailer. That was in my community. So if you're going to talk about safety, you're going to have an issue no matter what it is because people are going to store stuff in it that you tell them they can't. Now, what that does is it creates a liability for them for doing that and the damage that it causes. Will the shipping container blow up? I imagine if you put enough stuff in it, it would. But when you work out in the construction areas, we were required to store our gas and diesel in one of those containers because it was safer than having it in the back of your pickup or something like that. So I just want to reiterate that, you know, I look at the freedom I have been given here in Wyoming, basis the USSR of Michigan. And I could give you stories, believe me. We owned trailer parks, and we had covenants in those parks that required stick-built storage containers without storing any gasoline in them. But when somebody parks a lawnmower in there, there's gasoline in that lawnmower. Now, if that thing leaks, now it's not going to leak a lot. Sometimes it's a quart, but some of these riding lawnmowers would have a gallon or two. You know, there's always going to be that danger, no matter what kind of storage facility, even a garage. I mean, I saw a garage literally explode and collapse due to gas fumes. So, you know, I just see it as a way for the people in this community here to clean up their yards and have a place to put it. I'm trying to restore a house over here on South 3rd. I wish I could get my neighbors to buy a storage container and put some of their stuff in it. You know, I tore a garage down on my piece of property because it was so poorly built and it was too close to the lot line. So I'm just saying that I think you're heading in the right direction by having these containers out there. Yes, you're going to have trouble trying to get people to paint them and keep them up, but you're going to have that same trouble with anything they build for storage. It's the person that appreciates the property they have to take care of it. And it's not going to make a difference whether it's a shipping container, a stick-built storage, or some flimsy tin shed that they bought from the Walmart store. So that's my opinion.
Thanks, Bruce. Now, I think we've ridden this horse to death, and I wasn't going to make a big, long speech like some of our council has. But what I would draw us back to is I sat in a contentious meeting over an ordinance years ago about chickens. And Mayor Wharton was on the back shaking his head. And I can't think of anything I have not had. I had a guy call me from Thermopolis last week and said, Mayor Guard, can you talk to me about chickens? I said, I'd really rather not. But he said, what negative effects have chickens been in your community? And I got to tell you, they haven't been. I can buy eggs from people in town that have chickens, and I do. And I don't think there's been any great dramatic problem with chickens. And yet it was just the same thing that we're discussing tonight. It's ugly. And we can't legislate ugly. We can try, but there's lots of houses. Mr. Piplick, are there any houses in town that need paint that you have listed for sale?
Yes, there is.
Yeah. And can you demand that they paint their house?
I do all the time.
So should we write an ordinance? Would it be helpful for you if we wrote an ordinance that said you must paint your house before you sell it in Riverton, Wyoming?
If Chief Murphy will attend that with me.
Absolutely. So, and I don't mean to make light of this. The other thing that I would like to point out is so far the vote has been in the affirmative. And we aren't taking the minority. The majority wins here. And that's what we're trying to establish, is what the citizenry want. I've had this conversation out in front of me for 3 weeks and haven't had anybody come to me and say this is a bad idea. So I would now let Kristen read if you know what to read, Get right after it.
Got it, okay. Proposed ordinance number 19-010 on second reading, an ordinance amending Title 17 zoning to revise Chapter 17.20 accessory uses, Section 17.20.030 accessory building and use of the Riverton Municipal Code and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we're back to the motion, are we not, of Councilman Bailey and the second from Councilwoman Schatz.
That's correct.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, or is it 4 ayes? Any opposed?
Hey.
3 opposed. Thank you. The motion passes. We now move on to item 11, public hearing to consider it for consideration of ordinance number 19-011, first reading, prohibiting engine brakes in the city limits. City Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Not sure if I can follow that discussion, but I'll give it a shot. At the September 17th regular council meeting, council directed staff to prepare an ordinance addressing the prohibition and use of the use of compression brakes within the city limits. The matter was previously considered by council, but is back at your direction. The verbiage contained in Ordinance 19-011 is the same as previously provided and falls in line with most of the other ones throughout the state. We have previously discussed what compression brakes are, and that is defined within the staff report, so I won't belabor the point. The only addition that I would have to this, and with the previous report, was that we did just a quick run through of some of the other communities, because I was asked approximately how often is this common within Wyoming. So what I did was been about an hour and a half just going through the different municipal codes as fast as I could. Hey, does it exist here as compression, engine, brakes? Looked it all up. Approximately, we looked at Rock Springs, Sheridan, Green River, Evanston, Jackson, about 20. And of that, about 75% have them in place. I'm sure I missed a couple somewhere in there, but generally speaking, we're in the 75% range that have them. I could tell you who does. I was surprised that some didn't, and I was surprised others did. So at this point, it is the ordinance, as before, is recommended for your consideration, and we recommend approval. We'd be happy to answer any questions after the motion if you would like.
Thank you. Kristen, would you please read us the ordinance number 19-011 by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Proposed ordinance number 19-011 on first reading. An ordinance amending Title 12, Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places to revise Chapter 12.12, Streets and Sidewalk Use Regulations to establish Section 12.12.080, engine compression brakes prohibited, of the Riverton Municipal Code and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Who got the second? It's over here, Tim.
Sure.
We have a motion by Councilman Rhoda, and the next page, we have a second by Councilman Hancock. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I would like to add some information. Last time I lost this vote on a 6-1 vote.
Your Honor, as a point of order, the motion was just to open the public hearing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. We now declare a public hearing open. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes and with other applicable laws. I would ask those individuals wishing to address the council to approach the podium and to identify yourself for the record.
Yeah, Bruce Caminga, living on South Main, when the cattle trucks come in, about 4 to 5 in the morning, it'd be great to have this ordinance. Because, I don't know, is there a difference between muffled and unmuffled? Because I've seen some of them, said no unmuffled engine brakes. I've seen some where there's none at all.
Bruce, I don't understand that term.
I don't either. I've just seen some of them.
Councilman Bailey says he knows.
Yeah.
So yes, Your Honor, so on a normal stock and standard semi-truck, it has a muffler on it, okay, and the engine brake uses the exhaust pressure to slow the truck down, and it goes through the muffler and it is quieter. Okay, there are some truck drivers that prefer to take the mufflers off and put straight pipes on, just like you can on your 1979 Chevy pickup or whatever, and that necessarily increases the sound that they make pretty dramatically. And I think that is really the noise that we're all offended by, not a normal semi using its Jake brake, which is quite a bit quieter.
That's what I was wondering, yeah. I mean, they don't put jake brakes on boats, so I don't know,
Maybe they should.
Yeah, well, they already put enough stuff on those. Yeah. That would be my only question. Is there, if there's a difference? I mean, I know the unmuffled ones because they wake me up in the morning, so I do appreciate the ordinance.
Thanks, Bruce. Anybody else wishing to address us on this subject?
Jeremy Cruz. I wasn't going to speak, but I'd like to be on the record of agreeing with Mr. Bruce Kaminga on one thing. Get rid of the compression brakes. They might be great for truck drivers, but they disservice the rest of the city. Whether you live on a busy street or a not so busy street, I think you can hear them on City Park, other parks, the Railroad Walk. Unnecessary in the city, as 75% of the towns surveyed by Mr. Tolstead. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I agree with getting rid of them. If you're a truck driver that knows how to drive the right way and put on your brakes the right way, you don't need to put your jake brakes on. They just do it for the sound.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have one more question. Is there going to be fines?
That's to come to the mic, Bruce, please.
Bruce Cammingen, when they enforce this, is there going to be citations written for excessive noise, fines? I mean, what's all part of the ordinance?
There is
$750.
Yeah, there is maximums and minimums that you can be fined for using those, and it would be to the discretion of our law enforcement. Chief, jump in if I stray.
Your Honor, I will.
The police would be required to address those.
Okay.
But what my hope is, and I think, once again, we're down to law-abiding citizens, all right? And if we could get some signage up that suggested that you don't use those, maybe at 4 a.m, those guys would lay off those brakes. And if not, yes, the likelihood of sending out the police to knock down a bad noise guy making lots of noise is way down our list of what we're going to go look for. What we're trying to do is establish, once again, an ordinance that would establish law-abiding ordinance in Riverton, Wyoming.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Seeing no others, the
Your Honor,
chair.
I would move to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Bailey, a second by Councilman Hancock. Any discussion?
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 19-011 on first reading.
I would make that motion, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Rhoda and a second from Mike Bailey, Councilman Bailey. Discussion. Councilman Hancock?
Mr. Bailey can go first.
That's all right, go ahead. I've already spoke on it a little.
Yeah. I just wanted to note, we've got, our ordinance as it stands right now if we were willing to have officers out there with, by the way, do we have a decibel detecting apparatus instrument of any sort, Chief?
Your Honor, we do not.
Okay. The way our ordinance stands right now, 816.020, makes it so that if you have a vehicle with a manufacturer's gross weight rating of 10,000 on a truck route during the hours of 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., it's noise if it's over 88 decibels. So I think maybe some of those that are unmuffled maybe would create that really annoying.
It shakes your windows.
Yeah. But then it says when relating to all other sounds from whatever source, it'd be any sounds that exceed 80 decibels. I guess the way I read this is the idea is we're wanting to make sure that at night we don't have sound that exceeds 80 decibels. I looked it up. Engine brakes, according to Jacobs Brakes, their website, all, if they're muffled correctly, should be operating between 80 and 83 decibels. So in other words, they don't, our ordinance would basically say, as long as our officers are willing to be out there with the apparatus to detect the decibels that something produces from a distance of 35 feet on a dedicated public right-of-way, I mean, it's... I didn't write this one, so I'm not taking any.
Sounds like fodder for a lawyer.
Jeez. Yeah, and then it's like, how are you going to have somebody else say what it was if they weren't standing there with the officer when he detected it? Just it's an enforcement nightmare.
It is.
So, I mean, as it stands already, I think our ordinance was meant to capture this and was meant to be restricting Jake brakes at night, which is, I think, your biggest concern, Mr. Kaminga. My thought would be we could restrict them at all hours, but where we've already kind of got it where we're wanting to restrict them at night in the way we've written it, we could basically make this so that we're only doing it from those same hours. But if it's something that's bothering people during the day, I also don't have any problem with that either. I just wanted to note kind of what we have, and I think part of the reason we're even here is because this is so complicated and annoying to try to enforce. So, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Councilman Bailey?
Well, again, I would suggest that we look at possibly doing the unmuffled ones, which are the loud ones, because as Tim stated, a normally operating engine brake would be not exceeding the 80 decibels or 83 decibels. So I would move that we amend it to be unmuffled engine brakes.
Okay.
I'd second that.
Oh, man, you guys are messy.
Sorry, Mayor, if somebody were to look at a truck, they could easily tell if it's unmuffled or not, I'm sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I just wanted to make a point. I think when this was first brought up, a lot of the reasoning behind it was because there were some complaints from businesses about those loud brakes and they couldn't hear themselves on the phone and things like that. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah.
That should be considered.
I would like to speak to that. Excuse me? Tom, yes, please.
Tom, that Davenport with 71 Construction. I was just wondering how you're going to denote that on a sign at the city limits. I've traveled around the state, and you see a lot of no Jake brakes, no engine brakes. Most truck drivers know what that is, and if they use it, it'd be easier for the police department and enforcement to go up and say, hey, you used it, you know, you weren't supposed to, end the story. But by making it just muffled or unmuffled engine brakes, how can you put that on a regulatory sign that's enforceable? And that's what the truck drivers are going to need to just stop you using Jake brakes. That's all.
Thanks, Tom. That's my perception, is that the last noise ordinance was written by, Councilman Bailey mentioned it might have been written by an attorney. It is so vaguely said and nothing fits. And so what I would like to have is something that's easily recognized that says Riverton needs to be a quieter zone. So as you're coming through Riverton, it doesn't occur to me that a muffled Jake brake makes a lot of sense. And so Tony's flinching over there. The problem is Jake brakes is not a real term that we're working with. Engine brakes is what we're working with. And so it's hard to say a muffled engine brake. Those signs are designed to read at 40 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, whatever it is. The complaint that I've got, the initial complaint, was for businesses during the day, not at night. But after talking about it, I've had lots of conversation with people that say they are noisy and they are loud and they are coming through town and using them at their convenience. And I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that this is going to stop engine brakes just because we have an ordinance. We have an ordinance against speeding. Does it stop speeding? No. Those of us that are law-abiding, and there's lots of really great truck drivers that are law-abiding that will stay off their Jake brake, their engine brake. And so my suggestion is it's easy to read. It's concurrent to other locations. 75% of other locations in our state post these signs, and those drivers know what that is. And so I would try to keep this ordinance as simple as possible without making it. One other side note, as to decibels, Chief says we don't have one. It wasn't too many years ago, we had a great discussion of decibels about the gun range. And we took this up and down the flagpole, and we finally got everybody situated and the gun range built. And we went out and the police chief fired a .44 Magnum, and it didn't set off the decibel meter in the gun range, let alone all the streets that we were concerned with. And so I think what we're trying to do is enhance the quality of life in Riverton. If one or two truckers get off their brake, it would help enhance that. So I would like to leave the ordinance in place that reads no engine brakes. It's easy to read and easy to understand. Thank you. Now, where are we? We have a motion from Councilman Bailey to limit it to muffled brakes.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, is that all right with a second?
I'm fine.
Second removes. Do we have any other motions? Yes.
Why can't we just have a sign? Engine brakes prohibited.
That's what I would like.
I mean, dancing around 83, 87, 84.9. We just don't want to use them. When you enter the town, we don't want to, we don't want you to use your Jake brakes.
Would you make that motion, Councilman Larson? That's what I'm asking
We're
for.
already on the motion.
Excuse me?
That's what the motion does.
Yeah. Well,
No, it doesn't. It starts talking about compression brake prohibited. I mean,
actually,
no engine brakes prohibited. Just
excuse me. What we're talking about is resolution, I got to catch myself up, 19011. And it is just exactly what you stated. That's right. So if Councilman Bailey removes his motion, we're still there, so let's go for the vote. Are we at that point?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Councilman Larson.
When we talked about this last time, I would have bet the ranch that there was a sign up there by the cemetery on the one coming into town.
Me too.
I would have bet it. It wasn't there.
That's why you don't have a ranch.
Yeah.
We're on item 12 and moving along. Consideration of resolution number 1398, the Wyoming Water Development Commission grant amendment, city or Riverton Water Supply. Public Works Director's report, please, Kyle.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be brief.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Riverton Water Supply Project started in 2009. It was broken into 3 phases. We're working on completing the last phase of that project. However, it took some time to prepare this last phase. The real reason was it took time to procure all the necessary easements. Those easements are now in place. After we received the last easement from the tribe, we updated our plans, and in doing so, costs increased. Some of it was due to inflation. Some of it was due to the finalization of the plans and accurately denoting what was necessary for Phase 3. Therefore, we're asking for an increase to the funding source that we already have for the project. This is a grant and city match request. And then we're also asking for an extension of the reversion deadline for this grant, and that would be for a year. Some of you remember through our budget process, we were hoping to start the Riverton Water Supply Project Phase 3 last year. We could not because of this funding shortage. We have it in the budget to start it this year and continue it into next year. So this resolution is really support from the City Council to request additional funds from the Wyoming Water Development Commission and request an extension to the grant that we already have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Would the city clerk please read Resolution 1398 by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Proposed resolution number 1398, a resolution of the governing body of the City of Riverton authorizing the submission of a grant amendment application to the Wyoming Water Development Commission, the Select Water Committee, and the Wyoming State Legislature for the Riverton Water Supply Project.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve resolution number 1398.
So moved.
Councilman Bailey has a motion.
Second.
Second from Councilwoman Schatze. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion passes. Consideration of resolution number 1399, Water Smart Water and Energy Efficiency Grant Application. Public Works Director's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. You remember from our AML grant application, we have a meter problem in town, and we're looking for as many funding sources as possible to address that meter issue. That being, we need to improve our broadcasting and receiving components of those meters, and then also we need to comply with the low lead requirements that are now in place. This funding opportunity has been made available and we'd like to apply for it. It's a 50-50 grant. It will include the replacement of all of the city's water meters and will also update how we receive data about the consumption of water in our town. This will be a great opportunity for us to eliminate our current practice of driving by and or using handheld readers for meters and be able to broadcast data every hour to City Hall and have live tracking of our consumption. So this is a significant upgrade, and it solves a pretty large problem that we have right now with our meters. We're looking at, again, a 50-50 match for a $1.5 million project, and we request that this resolution pass so we can apply for these available funds.
Thank you. The chair would, thank you. Would the city clerk please read resolution number 1399 by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Proposed resolution number 1399, a resolution of the governing body of the City of Riverton authorizing the submission of a Water Smart Water and Energy Efficiency Grant application to the Bureau of Reclamation for the purpose of improving water consumption metering infrastructure.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve resolution number 1399.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Borders has the motion. Councilman Rhoda has the second. Further discussion?
Your Honor.
Please, Councilman Hancock.
I guess just in terms of persuasiveness, in paragraph 3, it says, to the best of our knowledge, our application meets those criteria. Do we meet the criteria?
Yes, Your Honor, we will.
I just think it'd be much more persuasive if we just say the City of Riverton meets that criteria. I maybe a little bit persnickety, but if I were to read something that says, I think I might do a good job at this job, hire me, it's not as persuasive as I'm the man for the job. I just suppose I think we could just change that language. It'd be more persuasive.
Your Honor, we can change that. The reason that was in there is the application guidelines are 90 pages long. And we wanted to make sure we didn't put you on the hook for missing paragraph 3 of page 87 of those items. And we took language that they recommended for resolution, but we can clean that up and have it more direct if that's what you so choose.
Well, I mean, I guess I don't want to do that if we're not feeling confident. I get what you're saying. I know how federal government stuff is, that they try to complicate things. Lawyers do that too.
Just in case.
So do you want to not suggest that, or do you want to keep?
I don't know. I just want to, I mean, how comfortable do you feel with that? Are we going to be charged with perjury?
Your Honor, I think everyone's safe except for the lawyers on the council.
That's why I'm nervous.
I'm just joking.
I guess
Your Honor, I have no problem changing that if that's something that you desire. We put that in there just because the application is so extensive and it applies to other laws in the federal government, so we have to comply with NEPA regulations, cultural regulations, historical regulations for artifacts, and so all of those tie into other laws associated with that 90-page document, and we will be as thorough as possible. So if you would like us to change that, we can change that. It's up to you.
I'd say leave it. I'm good.
I think we're all right. Thanks, Kyle. I do like your glasses, by the way. Good looking.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We all get old. So here we go. Is any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Item 14, recycling program discussion. City Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Recently, we had some inquiries with regard to our recycling program and the costs associated with that. And in an effort to better educate council on about where we're at with that, we wanted to prepare just some general numbers, and then if you have direction, we can take that. It would likely be an ongoing conversation as we have rate conversations upcoming as a part of our presentation on the 8th anyway. So the recycling function of the City of Riverton is part of the sanitation division. In attempting to calculate the efficiency or the cost of that particular function, we generally take the cost, or we calculate the cost of recycling materials that we pick up that do not go into the waste stream. We calculate those at $80 per ton, which is what we would have been paying otherwise, and then we weren't paying. And then, of course, we subtract the actual operational cost in order that is necessary to accomplish that function. In the case of last year, we provided for a couple graphs as part of your packet. In approximately 2016, we saw a significant decrease, and that was because the city pulled its multiple locations of recycling containers due to some regulatory changes, which some of the individuals in the room can speak about very intelligently. Both our Public Works Director and our CES Director is in the room, and they were, I'm sure, very, very involved in that conversation, as some members of this council were. But in about 2016, we saw a significant drop. If you look at 2015, we had about 709 tons, almost 708. Fine. In 16, we more than halved that. In 2017, we more than halved that. So approximately where we're at is in 2017, we had about 121 tons, and in 2018, we had about 139 tons. What does that mean? Well, if we look at the last year, but from July 19 to June of 20, maybe I got that wrong. I think I got those dates wrong. Anyway, the last year, the actual numbers that we have about 143.90. Let me make sure I have that right. That doesn't line up. Okay, I'm sorry, from 18 to 19, when we were doing the write-up, we did it a little bit wrong in your packet. However, what we ultimately found is that the cost versus savings in just pure dollars, if you were to divert those recycling items, every single ounce that we picked up to the waste stream, you would have saved and not had the functions happening within the city that we need in order to do that. It would have been about little more than $116,000 in savings. That's assuming none of the cost base for that function was going on. Additionally, we provide a credit when individuals recycle. The challenge with calculating the credit is that it changes month to month if people do it or don't do it. And so that, while it does become a bit of a nightmare for Mia sometimes, what we did is we calculated the last month, which ends up being $3,300 approximately. So if we took that out over 12 months and assumed it was consistent, you're in the $40,000 range. Because if you didn't have that function, you wouldn't, of course, have the credit. So what you end up having is that it's approximately $156,000 between less revenue and cost for service that we provide. However, it does keep some of that material out of the waste stream. So at this point, it does cost us money to, as you've been shown, to provide the service. We have not, if the conversation became one that we talk about doing away with the service, we would have to have a couple more calculations done. Specifically, in order to get you actual numbers, we'd have to delve into that a lot more. Would it be a savings? Yes, it would still be it would absolutely still be a savings. We have no reason to think it wouldn't be. It would probably be marginalized somewhat because some of those resources are used to do other things in the sanitation fund. So some of it maybe, it wouldn't be $156,000. But we would really have to delve into it a great deal more. Some of those numbers, we would have to generally calculate what the last year was, if it actually was $40,000. But generally speaking, with the information that we had, Mia had to run extra reports and call Black Mountain in order just to do those. So before we got too far down that road, we wanted to present you the general numbers that were requested and answer any questions that you might have. There's not an ordinance or resolution before you at this time, but we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Larson?
From 2015, it looks like you've got about 709, and currently we're somewhere between 121 and it looks like about an 87% drop in costs. And when we removed those dumpers from Smith's and the other areas, what we found was that a lot of that material was coming from off-site, non-revenue, non-residents of Riverton. What I'm getting at is what we found was 100% of the people pay for the recycling, 20% of the people use it. So 80% is paying for the 20%. But the thing that irritates me most of all is I just hate seeing a plastic bottle not being degenerated in one of our landfills. I mean, that is Rich and I disagree. We both agree that we want to keep Wyoming beautiful.
I didn't know we disagreed.
And so, you know, even though it's 80-20, 80% is paying for the 20%, I think it's okay. I mean, we would save $156,000, but if we really wanted to save money, we would truck our garbage somewhere else. And I'm positive we could find a place, Billings or Casper, that would take it, and we could save money that way. But we need to, my wife will die. We need to recycle. We need to keep the stuff that we can get rid of out of the landfills. We need to put stuff in the landfill that will degenerate, and we don't have to worry about it in the future. Thank you. Sorry.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate your point. Any other discussion? Councilman Bailey?
Go ahead. And again, I would agree with Kyle that I think recycling is a great thing, okay? I guess my main thing is, as the the people that are supposed to be fiscally responsible to the city of Riverton, carrying trash in Fremont County is not our job. It belongs to the Fremont County Solid Waste District, who does take recycling at the bailing station or whatever the transfer station that's down east of Riverton. Okay, and that would continue whether we continue to do it or not. I guess my main thing is looking at it fiscally. So basically, the city of Riverton spends $127,000 to pick up $11,000 worth of trash and take it to the recycling plant, okay? And then gives those people a $40,000 credit so that we can do that, which is just fiscally ridiculous, if you ask me. You know, I'm not saying the county can't recycle. I'm saying the city of Riverton shouldn't be in the business of picking it up and taking it down to the county and spending $150,000 doing it. I think if people want to recycle, they can take their recycling down to the transfer station and put it in the recycling piles. And then the county can figure out what the best way to do that is, because that's their job. Okay? And so I'm the one that started this discussion because, you know, I just see City of Riverton employees driving around, you know, picking up a little bag of bottles or a little bag of cans or, you know, and it's not a feasible thing to spend valuable manpower on. And again, the city's spending $150,000 to save putting $11,000 worth of trash in the dump that probably would still go to the recycling. Saving it from the dump.
Yeah.
Okay? And then they bail it up and they load it on a semi that burns diesel and drives it to Salt Lake or someplace. Okay? And so recycling is great, but it's got to be economically feasible too. And especially if it's not our job. You know, we got water and sewer to deal with and, you know, streets to take care of, and that $150,000 could be put to a lot better use, in my opinion, than driving around picking up trash for the third route around Riverton, probably.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councilman Hancock.
How much of this is, I know there'd been discussion early on because we used to have a lot of limitations in terms of when, like what week people could put what out. And I think we just moved towards doing it once a week. I think to simplify things, to try to encourage people to recycle was part of the idea, which, look at the statistics that maybe happened. I guess we made that change in 2018, so we could say maybe that 17.34 tons, maybe that's because we did that. But I guess if we were to cut back on this again, maybe to just be picking it up once a month or something like that rather than weekly, which I think the idea was to encourage recycling. How much we surely wouldn't see a quarter of the cost, but how much savings would that even really represent? I know you probably can't speak to that right now, but
Your Honor, that was something we have to look at. The real savings would be probably in the fuel and in the operating costs of that truck. The personnel costs would still be there, which is the significant portion of that cost center. So there would be a little bit of savings in fuel, but that would not be a significant number.
so it'd be more so somebody who's doing that would be able to do something else with their time, I guess. Is that about accurate?
Your Honor, that is correct. We could repurpose those employees to work in other functions of the sanitation division. Because this is part of the sanitation enterprise fund and they're paid from that fund, they can't cross over and help the chief write tickets or work in other areas of the general fund. It has to be sanitation specific.
Mayor, I've just got a couple questions. Mike might have answered the one. Do we ship it down to Salt Lake? Is that where our recyclables go?
Your Honor, right now, Fremont County puts the recyclables to the market, and they use a broker out of Salt Lake for the majority of those.
So my next question is, do we know about roughly how many people are participating in the recycling program?
Your Honor, I think Mia ran those numbers most recently. She may be able to answer that, and I hate to put her on the spot.
You know, honestly, Councilman Rhoda, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I'd be happy to research that. And
Do the 1 month you said, no?
Okay.
It'll take me a sec.
Your Honor, just to help with that answer, the participation in the recycle program fluctuates, and we have a hard time tracking that number because the only time we know that someone's participating is when they put something out on the curb for collection. And someone could put it out every 2 weeks, someone could put it out faithfully every week. We just don't know, and so because it is variable on when they participate, we have no idea at a certain point of time how many people are participating.
I'm guilty of the once every 3 weeks. I apologize. And lastly, my last question would be, would it be beneficial if we maybe took some more steps to make people aware of this program? I mean, do we feel that most of the city of Riverton is pretty aware that this is something they can sign up for and there's a stipend to it if you're able to participate?
Your Honor, it's been some time since we've run an advertising campaign for recycling. So whether there'd be value in that, we could see, but I can say that we have not run any type of promotion in several years.
Your Honor?
Yes.
When we establish new utility accounts for any new customer coming on with the city of Riverton, we absolutely provide them with full information regarding the recycling program and give them the opportunity to sign up, both at the time that they set up their account and any time after that, if they should choose to.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just have a question on, say if people were to take their recycling down to the fill station, what kind of a fee is there associated with that? There's none, okay.
That's what I was going to point out. The county's done a really good job of putting recycled bins. And the biggest complaint that I receive from people is that they can't remember what to put out on what day, and it gets confusing, and then they end up with 3 or 4 great big garbage sacks of cans, and they miss the day. And so I don't know if that's correct or not, but what Councilman Bailey is trying to point out is that recycling center is open. It's not behind the gates, it's in front of the gates. So you can go down and recycle anytime you want at your leisure, on your Saturday, whatever day is good for you, instead of setting it out. We don't have those containers once emptied blowing around town until somebody comes out and captures their containers. There's a lot of positives to this. We're not trying to tell you that you can't recycle. If you choose and want to recycle, that is your prerogative, and you can go down and put it in. You are going to lose that credit, which, you know, is substantial. It's $40,000 just on the preliminary side of that. So there will be people that are disappointed in losing that. Yes.
I'm just thinking here, I know there's a little old lady across the street from me that uses this. I think for her to have to take her recycling down there would be kind of out of the question for her. So I kind of like Tim's idea of maybe moving it to once a month, and then the rest of the time, and I don't know if there's a savings associated with that.
Your Honor, the challenge with different ones, one way or the other, is if it's done, if the pickup is less, sometimes your participation also decreases. Therefore, your savings also decreases. And I couldn't even begin to guess what the actual behavior change would be if you move to once a month. So but you would have, like with any supply and demand curve, a reduction in use probably, or a change in use, let's call it that. But you would not have really a change in your cost center.
What we have in front of us, Councilman Bailey?
I guess to me, what do you think would happen if we just charged the citizens what it actually costs us to pick up recycling, which means they'd get, $120,000 added to their bills in a year because that's what it costs if they had to pay more to recycle? How would that work?
It would stop recycling.
That's what we're doing as the city of Riverton.
Right.
We're paying more so that people can recycle, okay? And I guess my main point is it's not our issue.
Right.
It's the county's issue. They want to recycle, and they've got bins put out there. People can put it out if they want to. And unfortunately, the person that can't take it down there can throw it in their dumpster, and it doesn't cost them 1 penny more.
Right.
Kyle?
Now, Mike is absolutely correct, but also electronic waste is free. So that big television that's sitting in the backyard or in your storage shed, that can go down there. That doesn't cost you. And I'm talking about copy machines, electronic waste is free, so it doesn't cost you anything. Cardboard is free. You don't have to pay for it. So cans are free. They're quite, but remember, they're not open on Monday, or Sunday, but they are open on Saturdays. So you just fill up the pickup and have at it. $150,000, I'm positive Mike can use that somewhere on the streets.
Well, and that's the discussion. Is there any further?
Mayor, I just want to point out one thing. I do believe they have, and it may be gone now, but weren't you able to just scan your card at the recycling center off Smith there as well? So you can still go there and get the savings. There's a little green post and you put your little card under. So you still get those savings if you take them yourself down there. That is still applicable.
Your Honor, that is correct. We have those scanners in place, similar to how we had them at the drop-off locations. They are down there, and our sanitation supervisor is here, and he has confirmed that.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming.
All right, one more question.
All right.
Sorry.
Shoot.
And we're not even here, it's not even 10 yet.
It's early for
So I
most
guess
of us.
that was one of my questions that in the discussion, so we give them a credit if they put stuff out. So how do we keep track of who puts their recycling out and who doesn't?
Your Honor, it's based on the scanner. So when someone puts it out, they have the barcode, and you scan it. Our employees.
So we have a highly sophisticated electronic system to track something that costs us more money too. Just being facetious, so.
Mia, I see you smiling. Do you have anything to add?
Your Honor, we did actually have to create some customization in our software to support this system when we initially started it. We have thousands of stickers that have been issued to residences, and when a customer signs up for recycling, we scan the barcode into our software, and it associates the barcode number with that customer's account. So when we do put out the recycling, that's when it triggers a recycling event through the billing. The problem with the software is because it is a customized situation, is it's just set on a default code. So all of our citizens are, they are assigned a rate code based on their container size. And then if there is a recycling event, it will trigger the recycle code, but it defaults back to the main rate code after the billing occurs, which is why it's really hard for us to say how many customers on a regular basis do we see actually recycle, because it wipes it out of the system every month after we do the billing.
Please.
My name is Sean Griffin. I'm the CEO of Community Entry Services, and we're a big partner in this recycling. We were doing it before the Solid Waste District, before the city of Riverton. We've been doing it for over 27 years. So I have to say a few things. I'm not going to tell you how to run your business. Just because CES has a nonprofit after our name doesn't mean we can exist if we don't make money. We understand the downsides to recycling, the fact that it's not a moneymaker. But a lot of what you're talking about today was talked about years and years ago when you had public meetings, and you had a pretty big outcry of the public that came. So I would just suggest that you continue with that. But more so, please let us know what steps you might take, because we are vested in equipment and other things to help process the city's recycling. And we just need to know what direction you're going to take, because we have to plan accordingly and to reshift some of our staff and find jobs for some of our folks. And so again, I understand what you're saying, Mike, as far as business. You know, CS is a relatively large business in this community as well, and so I know what it takes to have to run a business, understand what the city's doing here. But at the same time, we've been vested in not just rah-rah, we're the nonprofit that plays the game. We put a lot of money into this, and we want to be at least be kept abreast of what's going on so we can plan accordingly. That's all.
Thank you, appreciate that. What we're talking about tonight is that we need a motion to give city staff an idea and the ability to go back and come back to us with the amount of savings and their suggestions. Everything's been mentioned tonight is good discussion. People can recycle. We want them to recycle. We just find it extremely costly in our side of it. So I would entertain a motion from anybody of what you'd like the city to do.
Your Honor.
Kyle?
One last thing. The only thing that makes money is clean cardboard. It's the only cans, bottles, don't make the money. Of course, scrap metal, peppers, that makes money. But clean cardboard that CES picks up out of each one of the containers that are next to 7-Eleven or Subway or wherever they put them, that makes money. And they do an excellent job.
That's right. Councilman Bailey?
Your Honor, I would move that the city staff further investigate the specific costs of the city doing the pickup and delivery of recycling to the county transfer station.
Do we have a second?
I would second that.
It's not the county transfer, it's ours.
It's,
The city stuff comes to CES recycling center.
okay, I mean,
Nice to know.
to the recycling
We
center.
appreciate that.
Down there that quality checks and puts it in the right containers.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion from Councilman Bailey and a second from Councilman Rhoda. Any further discussion?
Just one, Mayor, and then I'll stop talking so much. From my understanding, the numbers really dropped when we pulled the trailers out of those places. So maybe the alternative would be to go back to those rather than the house to house. I don't know if that would be an option, but that would maybe be something I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were the main reason that stopped was, we used to have to sort that stuff.
It would be, the city would ship it down to us, to our recycling center, dump it, and we would ship all that stuff, or sort all that stuff. And what happened, without having policing, I'm sure you guys are well aware of it too, we had people dumping all kinds of stuff in there. I mean, we found puppies, we found weapons, we found drugs. We couldn't have our clients sort through that stuff anymore.
That makes sense.
And when we talk about regulatory stuff, at the time, we had clients that were pretty severely involved that really had difficulties maintaining a job in the community because their productivity rate might be 10 or 20% of the normal population. We were able to pay them a sub-minimum wage, not to exploit them, but to give them a job and give them training skills and also give them a paycheck, and that changed. We are no longer able to do that. And so all those factors combined really makes it difficult, Councilman Rhoda, for us to do that if we're going to be part of that sorting.
Understandable. Thank you.
That was
Your Honor.
federal regulation, in case anyone's curious about that.
Your Honor, and to Councilman Rhoda's question, in other communities that I've served, we had the same problem. One of the challenges that you have with those locations is that they get abused. And it's not just here. I've personally pulled out a transmission off a Chevy out of one of them. I hear it fall out sometimes, but no. We have found some very interesting items. In one community, we even put game cams on trees in order to catch, and you would be amazed at the things we watch people put into them. And that's one of the challenges, just as was pointed out. It has to do with the federal regulations, but also the fact that unpoliced and policing them would be a far too significant a cost. They become abused because people, well, I can just throw something in there, and then they have to be separated, which becomes its own challenge. That's not an abnormality in terms of practices. That's why a lot of those are so hard to. You do see communities that, like if you go to Casper, I have one over towards the river. I think it's in Mills, actually. Now, if you look at that, it's also fenced, and it also, last time I looked, had cameras. That's why it doesn't get abused the same way.
Thank you.
Councilman
As soon
Bailey?
as the county started charging by the ton for trash, that's when this problem becomes bad, because I get it all the time at my businesses where people just pull up with their pickup and unload a half a dozen bags of garbage because they're too cheap to pay for their own garbage pickup. And so, yeah, it becomes this huge issue. Not that my issue will go away with not having those containers, but it's the same problem.
Well, and just for general information, it really burdens our police department because just recently, behind the old Kmart, people had just decided that that was a dump spot. And Chief was kind enough to send his guys out. They don't like digging through garbage, but they did, and they found the receipts of those, and those guys went to court and got fined, I believe, as high as $750 for that action.
For that.
I had a gentleman come to me today and say that there's a dumping spot and wanted me to sick kicking trash on it on the end of Railroad. And so Councilman Bailey's correct. We have more of this because we now charge to get rid of waste. And part of the problem is it's hard to defend on all sides, because if you live in Atlantic City, you get to throw your garbage away Sunday afternoon from 1 to 4 is when you can dispose of your garbage. And so all of these regulations add up to, well, I can't make it this Sunday, I can't make it next Sunday, I have 3 weeks of garbage, I'm just going to go throw them out in a ravine. And so we want to help recycling. I don't think Councilman Bailey's idea is to obstruct that. I think his idea is very fiscally sound. We're at that point. We needed $1 million last budget. We could use some help with those things. We would encourage people to recycle, and they can recycle on their own. They can drive down at their convenience and deliver that product to that facility. I appreciate you pointing out that it's your facility, and we would support you in anything that you do there. So, Kyle?
Just one last thing here.
Okay.
In 2014, the budget was substantially different than in 2019 and 2015, and it has continually constricted. And it's a wonderful thing to recycle, but it's something that, you don't put transmissions in your garbage can, and you don't put spare tires. You're responsible. So I don't think Mike's Councilman Bailey is out of line looking that here's a goal. We found something. And we have, Corey, we have practiced recycling since before 2014. So Mia knows that she has given the speech over and over again, and it's a choice. So it's not that we haven't publicized it weekly that you can recycle. It's a foregone conclusion. So, it's an attitude.
Thank you, Kyle. Any other discussion?
I guess, Your Honor, the only thing I'd note is, whatever we do with this, I agree with Mr. Griffin. I think we need to make sure that we have it publicized and have the community there. But I do think it is a good idea for us to look at cost and try to figure that out. And, the reality is, if the community was really interested in it, I think we'd be seeing different numbers. So I don't know how interested people are. It's not being utilized, even though we've made it as convenient as we can. We got rid of the recycling on certain days, and it's just, you can put anything out on Fridays, I think, for most people, at least it is for me. But,
Your Honor, we've established routes, and so you can put any commodity on your day similar to your sanitation day.
So but I do think we need to make sure we get the public involved with everything. But I do think starting off, investigating is the way to go.
Are you done?
I'm done, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else? So we're at the end of discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes. We're at item 15, council committee reports and council members roundtable. Rebecca, first off, please.
Sure. This afternoon before council, I met with a couple of my partners in
Crime?
so to speak. So kicking trash gals and whatnot. And we were talking about what we can help with the fall festival. It's going on. And we talked about what we can do for kicking trash this winter because the snow's going to cover all the trash. So what do we do to keep involved and get the excitement going? So we've got some fun things planned. We think they're fun. Maybe the majority of the community doesn't, but just know that this winter we're not stopping with our kick and trash plan. Chamber after hours will be this Thursday at Teton Therapy, starting at 6 p.m. So if you can attend, it's open to the public. You don't have to be a business owner or part of the chamber or anything. Just you could be a citizen and please attend that. Learn about your chamber, see what's going on in the community. Community Engagement Committee met last Monday. We talked with Cameron Faring, who's heading the Riverton Holiday Festival. Website just went up, so take a look at that if you're a business owner in the community. There's some cool stuff planned for you on different competitions that you can get a part of. In addition, things for the community members to participate in. And then we also discussed how we can assist the downtowners with their fall festival. We had one of the businessmen come to the committee from Fremont Therapy Group wanting to do something. And so we are assisting him in creating an obstacle course for downtown, and then his guys are going to run that just to promote their business as well as promote activity in the community. So other than that, that's about it.
Thank you. Kyle?
Attended the Fremont Trash Collection meeting on the third Monday of last month, and they're fiscally responsible, and they have no problems whatsoever, as long as they got our money. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. Corey?
Mayor, I don't have too much to report on. I just wanted to also mention the Fall Festival that's going to be going on downtown. That will start at 2 o'clock on the 12th. Come down, have a good time, support some local businesses. I'll be there playing some music and stuff too, so say hi. That's all I have, Mayor.
2 o'clock on Saturday the 12th, is that correct?
That's correct.
This can run to 7, isn't it?
I believe till 11.
11. Some of us are in bed by 11. Okay.
That's on Broadway, right?
Yes, sir. Broadway and Main Street.
Thank you. That's all?
Yes, sir.
Carla?
I don't have a lot to report. We haven't, the Solutions Committee hasn't met for a couple weeks, so. Really all I have, and I wanted to mention this last time and I just forgot, but I want to recognize Ashley Strickland. She is doing a phenomenal job. There's so much activity going on, and she's really, you can just tell how hard she's working. So I just want to give her a shout out.
And she's the chamber director.
Yes.
Yeah, I would second that. She's not hitting as many meetings as me, but she's right there with me
She's
most of the time.
Girl.
She is a hard worker, so I appreciate her. Good point out. Is that all?
I think that's all I have right now. Thanks.
Tim?
Nothing to report from meetings, I suppose. I read something that was interesting in USA Today, and I enjoyed reading it, that they listed all the 50 best places to live in the United States, and we made the list.
38th, weren't we?
37th.
37th?
Which is a little bit better than 38th.
That's pretty good. Nationwide.
Yes, yes. I mean, we're right up there next to North Liberty, Iowa. I don't know anything about North Liberty, Iowa, but Aberdeen, Jasper, Indiana is a little bit ahead of us. Number one, I guess, according to them, is West University Place, Texas. But anyway, I think it's something, a lot of people talk about Riverton and they might say it with negativity about it, but I think that there's a lot of good things happening, and I think Carla is exactly right that there's a lot of good things happening, and it's nice to be able to be recognized in this way by somebody who I guess, doesn't have a dog in the fight, I suppose. Unless somebody who wrote it lives in Riverton or something.
Tony, how much did we pay for that report?
I'll have to check. Our advertising budget's gone now.
That's all, Your Honor.
Thank you, appreciate that comment. I read that too, and that's important to point out. Thank you for doing it. Councilman Bailey.
Thank you. Again, I got to attend the airport board meeting. And again, I think things are moving along very well. The numbers are holding pretty decent at the airport. And again, I think it's January 12th, SkyWest will take over where Denver Air Connections is right now. And we will see some additional services come to our airport. You'll be able to do, check bags, checked all the way through to your destination, have hopefully better pricing because of the connecting flights that they are, involved in. There's some renovations going to happen at the airport to help us because they're bringing in a 50-passenger jet. So they have to expand the secure area enough to hold 50 passengers. And so I'm really excited to see how that's going to help our airport. And I think people need to really think about it because if you really factor in the cost to have to drive to Casper or Jackson or Cody or Denver or Salt Lake, that's a significant cost in mileage and time and vehicle maintenance and all that. And so I think you can justify, now you put 6 people in a Suburban, maybe you can't save enough, but I'll tell you, when you're flying 1 or 2 people, it makes a heck of a lot of difference. And so I think there's some really exciting stuff going on at the airport. I think it's going to really help us. And, there's a lot of neat stuff going on. I second what Tim says is, I think Riverton is a great place to live. I have had the opportunity to visit a lot of different towns and cities and areas in the United States, and lots of them are beautiful, but I am really excited to always come back home. And, every town has its set of issues, but overall, we don't have a lot of them. If you, go to a big city and you start listening to their newscast, and then you come back to Riverton and listen to our newscast, the things that we're talking about are nothing compared to what those big cities are talking about. Crime and traffic and all kinds of issues that we just don't see anything comparable. We have our issues, but, I think Riverton's an amazing place to live. We got a lot of neat new stuff coming. Sutherland's is getting close to opening up. The Murdoch's is moving into the Safeway building.
Burgers and more.
We've got a new hamburger place coming in. And so, I think we've got a lot going for us, and I think so hopefully people are as excited about it as the rest of us are.
New pharmacy.
Pharmacy?
Yep,
So,
You get a discount being that close?
I did. I don't have to drive as a discount. I walk. Rhodes, you want it, or me?
go ahead.
You're done then?
Yep, I'm done. Thank you.
Tony?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple quick items. Our Public Works Director, Kyle, pointed out that we had applied for the AML grant funding, and he was nice enough not to steal some of my end of night report. But we, at this point, there was, Kyle's pointed out, there was $20 million available and $80 million in requests. And unfortunately, we are not currently recommended as part of ours. Ours split between the meter project and the Cowboy Lane project. Staff, Kyle, Mia, everybody put together the grant application with $900,000 going toward meters and $350,000 towards Cowboy Lane. And we are, while it's not necessarily rejected, it doesn't carry with it a recommendation. So make with that what you will. However, again, staff is already, as you approved this evening, still chasing those grant funds like you've asked of us, and it's been, everybody's always looking for those. Everybody, anytime money comes up, that's something we're always going after. So we do appreciate that direction. I really appreciate the work of staff and how everything they've done towards that end. With regard to, I'll switch over to the planning department, but Eric came back today and said, hey, guess what? There's 2 things, and I almost missed them on my report. One was that the master plan was reviewed by the county, and it's approved. And then the de-annexation of the Vasco subdivision was considered and is still moving forward. So we're very appreciative of those. Those conversations are very long. Annexations, we have a number of annexations that we have letters that have been applied for, like, hey, come annex me. So that's something that you'll see coming forward, and each one of those processes has to be taken independently. As much as we wish we could just say, okay, all of these at once, you got to do them one at a time. So we're appreciative of all the work being done there to start clearing that up, and all the work on the master plan and the Vasco subdivision. And then finally, if you remember, council directed staff to seek alignment of the speed limits on West Main. That is done. Initial conversation with regard to changing those has not been as fruitful at this point. The initial numbers that they were looking at with the traffic study did not support the change. However, they were going to take a look at it after school got started for a little bit, just to try to give it a good analysis. So we may report something different in the future. However, they're lined up. There's plenty more to say. I wish I could show everybody some highlight reel or some montage of all the work that over the last few weeks that staff has been doing. I think it largely resembles, in the nicest way possible, by the way, an ant colony. Just the amount that gets done is just amazing, and they're a great group of people to work with, everybody across our organization. I'm very lucky to get to work with them every day, and I am very appreciative of what they've been doing, sometimes shorthanded. So thank you very much to all of them. I don't have anything else, Your Honor, other than just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. Those are all really good, important things. Councilman Bailey doesn't take the opportunity. He works hard on the Force Committee. We have Force Committee members in the room, and we've done a wonderful job this year. Bell Street is put to bed. It looks great. If you want to drive down it, it's smooth as can be. College View is finished and looks good. Village Drive, I drove down it, and amazingly well done, and went above and beyond. The citizens down there had put their water system in kind of poorly, and for those center islands, and we fixed that, and we went above and beyond the call there. I appreciate that. Federal, I drove down Federal today, and it's really looking good. We're down to 3 or 4 holes, and they're racing right along. Looks like we may make the cut. Weather's holding. I'd like to commend our police department for the work that they do. I know that it's not easy. I think that our police department does a wonderful job and does what's required of them. Our city staff, there's bad days and there's good days, and they do a wonderful job. And so I appreciate all of that. I have a kind of longer list, and I'm going to amend mine because of the hour. But we came together this last week or two on the silliest things. We had the Department of Agriculture closing down coffee shops, the airport restaurant, the college, over wash sinks, hand wash sinks. And it was nice to see everybody come together, and we took a bunch of phone calls, but we got the Brown Sugar, got their operating license to roast beans, if you can believe it. And I think lots of times these conversations that we have, they really do make a difference. They make things work and give people the right to make different choices. They're not always the choice that we would suggest, but we're becoming so overregulated that it's difficult to be successful. We have a shovel in the ground up at the dentist's office on North 8th. I appreciate Eric has gone out of his way to permit that foundation and get that thing going before winter hits us, and I appreciate that, and I think they do too. And so I think we're doing some really wonderful things, and the Department of Agriculture, back to them, they've been threatened by the federal government. If they don't tighten the regulations for the state of Wyoming, the feds think they're going to step in and take care of food requirements in Wyoming. This is not small information. This is stuff that goes right down the lines, and we need to work on it. I got a visit from the Cody mayor. Just stopped into my office and wanted to talk about economic growth and what Cody was doing. And Cody's a good example of what's positive and what can be done. And so it was a good conversation. I've had 2 conversations with Scott McFarland, just another citizen sitting on the Riverton Valley Irrigation District. We're just trying to pull together and get some things done. I also had the really fun opportunity to take a mine tour that Representative Miller put on last Friday. We went out to Gas Hills. We went into Natrona County without a visa. We got in there. And we got to see a gold mine operation, and they're just drilling holes on different angles in a formation that they've already recovered 120 million ounces of gold, and it's still not profitable to put the big machines in. And so lots of times we lose sight of what it takes to make the energy market work. It's costly as can be. And so Wyoming is run on extraction, and Tony's been helping me write a letter that we can send off to the governor and maybe to others about how important jobs are in Fremont County. And extraction jobs are the basis of what we have. And so as you discuss that around the dining room table and around Riverton and those things, we need to support and to help mining, oil and gas, and those mineral extractions to be successful. I appreciate everybody's help. It's been an interesting evening. It's not that late. I can stay up past 10 on my own. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Ernie?
Yeah, Ernie over with the FAST Committee. To follow up with Council Member Bailey was talking about, we still have Denver Air Connection here, and our fare sale started today. So it's a 2-week-long fare sale for Denver Air Connection, and good for travel through January 11th, obviously. And there are a couple of blackout dates around the holidays, but we don't want people to forget about Denver Air Connection. They're still good and viable and will serve the city through January 11th.
And you shouldn't get me started like that, Ernie, because you know how I like the FAST Committee. And thank goodness we have that. We've got just really great things happening in the future at the airport. And that's largely because of Kyle's efforts. It's largely because of the FAST group, who are hard hitters and haven't given up, and the city being supportive of it. Yeah. How many years have we fought over the black hole at the airport? It's not easy to do. And so I appreciate everybody's efforts, and I think we're doing a good job, and it's starting to turn around the corner. We don't have an executive session, do we?
No, Your Honor.
Unless there's a complaint from anyone, I would move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seeing none, we're adjourned.